Hi, I'm Tom and welcome to yet another video on F1 Fantasy. We're into race week 8 and we're going to Azerbaijan this weekend. Thankfully, it's actually probably more commonly known as Baku, which is a lot easier for me to say when I'm going to be using the term quite a lot in this video, and a lot easier for me to spell for the YouTube channel, for the YouTube title. So yeah, we're going to Baku. In this video, I'm going to be looking at my team, which you can currently see on screen. This is the exact team I left from Monaco. I've not made any substitutions. I've taken that big old hit from Perez. He's lost minus, 0.4, because, that completely makes sense when he finishes second and then wins the race. Let's just chop off like 500,000 of his value, but we'll get into that in a minute. So yeah, have a look at my team in a minute whilst I whittle on in this introduction. So yeah, I'm going to be looking kind of at my own thoughts on what to expect in Baku and specifically what I'm thinking for my team. Obviously my budget may be slightly less or it might be slightly more than what you have as a budget, so you can think about what I'm doing, and then maybe you can sub in or sub out, or maybe you can improve the team that I'm looking at if you've got an extra million or two or whatever you've got lying around. On top of looking at my teams, we're also going to have a look at Twitter as usual. Before the race week, I put like a little question out if you've got any questions for me, and I got a few responses here, so I'm going to go through those questions. Maybe we'll look at the spreadsheet, maybe we won't, who knows. I probably will, because I love them. I love my spreadsheet. It's my little baby. And also, just a heads up, because shock horror, I'm not a full-time YouTuber. I'm just a random man on the internet, and I have a life with a job and everything. And yeah, I'm actually going away this weekend, and therefore I won't be able to upload any final thoughts videos. So this is it, people. This is it. I will be back next week for like a proper routine of team selection into final thoughts for Canada. But this week will be a bit of an anomaly for me in terms of uploading. So sorry guys, you're gonna have to think on yourself. I'm not gonna be holding your hand on Friday evening. So yeah. So anyway, like I say, back to normal next week. So make sure you're subscribed for that. Yeah. So this is my team. Like I say, this is my team from Monaco. I haven't changed anything. I've taken that big old price hit, and I could honestly rant for like another 20 minutes about the price changes. Let's just try and keep the rant really short. What the hell is going on with the price changes? It's surely something to do with a hacker or a group of people making bot accounts which are completely manipulating the market. Sometimes it's shooting up, sometimes values are going down. People are shooting up to 98% and then freezing and then trickling back down. People who are DNFing are like going up 500,000. People who are winning races like Perez are coming down almost 500,000. It's a complete and utter minefield, and it has kind of taken away some of the fun for me, because I quite like trying to work out what's going on with the price changes and anticipate and try and capitalize that and build the budget. But it's almost like pot luck. Like at the end of the day, we don't know what's going on. Play on who are the people behind the game. Clearly, I don't know. They don't appear to be doing anything, and if they are, they're not telling us about it. I wish they would speak up about it, but they're not. So all we've got to go on is our hunches, and I think the general hunch in the community is that people are botting a bunch of accounts and manipulating the market however they want, and they make their big old budget, and we are left floundering, not knowing what's going on. But anyway, that's the rant done. Let's move on to the actual team. So we're looking at Baku. Always, I'm thinking whenever I think of a race, I think where the big points are coming from. Obviously, the big points can come from the best teams, the pretty much the best couple of teams. This year, the best two teams at the moment are Red Bull and Ferrari, as we all know. Mercedes are a little bit behind them. They are closing that gap a little bit. But I still think that the best teams are going to be Red Bull and Ferrari. So obviously, Red Bull and Ferrari are going to be kind of predominant in my teams at the moment. So obviously, Max Verstappen is on a nice big old race streak, and there's lots of questions about whether we should be having Max in our teams. And a part of answering that question comes in who's going to do better, Ferrari or Red Bull. Truth is, I don't know. None of us actually know until the race happens. So maybe ask me on Sunday. No, honestly, we can make some predictions about what's going to happen. Obviously, Baku being a circuit, Sector 1, Sector 3 really favour straight line speed, which the Red Bulls have shown to be superior in so far this season. I think the Ferraris have shown that they've come a bit closer together. There's some data that came out of Monaco suggesting that Ferraris were suddenly a lot like closer or even stronger than the Ferraris in the straights, but that's Monaco. Like, what the hell? That if Monaco had like a runway, it would probably have a corner in it. So I don't know. I don't know how much I believe that Ferraris have closed the gap to the Red Bulls, and I still think that the Red Bulls are probably going to be stronger in Sector 1 and Sector 3, and that's two-thirds of the track. So overall, I'm thinking the Red Bulls are probably going to be stronger than the Ferraris, but Baku is quite a lot about balancing balancing the setup. You don't want to go too much of a low wing because you'll suffer a lot through the castle section, where the Ferraris will probably be quite strong. So if the Ferraris get the setup right, then they could do well. They introduced that new sort of low downforce wing in Miami. I'm not sure they actually ever used it in Miami, but they had it. They've got it there at their disposal. So the Ferraris could still potentially throw some spanners in our fantasy teamworks if we're thinking Red Bulls are going to do well, and we'll pile into Red Bull. And one of the builds I actually want to look at is piling into Red Bull, and literally like going ham on Red Bull and negating the Ferraris entirely. So this is a build you can go straight in. And I'm 0.7 short of this. What am I doing? This is not a build you can go straight in. I haven't even finished picking the drivers. Right, so Albon is... He's not done so well in the last couple of races, which is kind of what I anticipated actually. But I think this race could be more suited to Albon. Baku historically has had quite a few DNFs, people crashing out. It's not the easiest of tracks. Lots of drama goes on in this race. So the fact that we might be expecting and anticipating drama makes me think that a build like this, going all in on the Red Bulls, is a bit scary. Because if anything does happen to the Red Bulls, obviously we're going to be a bit scared about that. I personally am not going for this team because it's minus 10 for me, but this is definitely a team. If you want to go completely all in on Red Bull, I think it's fine. But like I say, Verstappen is on that streak, and if you think, if you really think Verstappen's worth bringing in, then that means that Red Bull is probably also worth bringing in, and therefore a team, if you can get to this team without taking any minus 10 points hits, and I think this team is actually quite reasonable. Bottas, he's proven. I'm not going to say anything about Bottas other than the fact that Bottas is just incredible for fantasy this year, and that's what I'm going to say. The Haases worry me slightly. They've not been doing super great recently. We look at them down here. Look at Schumacher with his points per million per race is awful. In fact, it's the worst in the entire grid. So he's had a couple of DNFs. Magnussen's coming back down to earth after his lightning start to the season, and he's down to 1.4, which is still great, but it's not anything to write home about. And then you can see down here as well, quite importantly, these minus points for losing positions. The Haases seem to qualify quite well, and not quite there in the race pace. There were no upgrades in Spain, although they look kind of okay in Spain, but they're just not super exciting. They seem to have this habit of falling back in the race. So yeah, I'm not super, thinking about the Baku track as well. Qualifying isn't super important in my opinion for Baku. I think a lot more of it's going to be down to race pace, and the Haases worry me slightly. So bringing in Haases is a bit scary. And there are some builds going around of like Magnussen and Schumacher, which just to like squeeze in Verstappen basically. And I'm not convinced about it. Obviously, I don't know. I haven't really looked at that build myself because I don't think it's super feasible. But I imagine it looks something along these lines, and probably lost Perez for someone like Lando. It depends on your budget. I know I can't afford this, but Schumacher, then you could probably upgrade. Where are we? Back up to Perez. So you could have a build like this if you wanted to sort of split the difference between the Ferraris and get Verstappen on his streak. And I'm not convinced by this. I think people will go for this, and sure, why not? But for me personally, I don't think I'm going for this because the Haases are just less than convincing. And now I've said that and spoken about the Haases for like 2 minutes straight, they're probably going to like podium or something random. Who knows? Baku, like I say, random stuff happened last year. We had a podium of Perez, Gasly, Vettel. So yeah, you wouldn't expect that this season. But Vettel is actually an interesting one. I'm going to talk about in a minute actually, because Vettel, his record at Baku, if you look it up, is quite incredible. I don't know for sure. I had a look earlier, but I think he's finished in like the top 4 or 5 like every single race since Baku came about in 2016 or whenever it was. So pretty amazing. And while I am not I don't believe just because he's done well every race so far in Baku he's going to do really well again. I do think that certain tracks are suited to drivers, and certain drivers will come to a certain track with a lot of confidence. If any of you guys have played like F1, the actual F1 racing game, then you probably have your favourite tracks that you do well on that, and it's probably no different to being an actual real life racing driver where you favour certain tracks, and maybe Vettel just really excels at Baku, so Vettel could be a good pick. But anyway, back to business, because there are literally so many builds that you can have for Baku. There's so many builds, and I tried to narrow it down as much as I can, but until we see the practice sessions, it's hard to really pinpoint exactly what we want to do. So we've had a look at the Red Bull kind of all-in build. I've always got this fallback plan for me. The fallback plan is kind of splitting the difference with, where are we? I've got Verstappen, the fallback plan. This doesn't include Verstappen on his streak, but something on these lines, which is like, if in doubt, this team is very balanced, solid. It scoops up Verstappen's points minus the plus 10. I like this team, and obviously Magnussen, if the Haas aren't doing super well, for me, I've got a budget of 9.4. Some of you might have more than that, but you could easily go for like Lance Stroll if the Aston Martin's looking good. You know, Stroll, I've said it before. Look at Stroll's points here. I'll just highlight him here. Yeah, points per race, 11, which is only is third place out of everyone in this like bottom 2/3 of the grid. So Stroll's going under the radar slightly. Look at these points he's gathering from gaining places. He doesn't qualify super well, but he keeps consistently finishing races, and therefore anyone who DNFs ahead of him, or the race pace of the Aston Martin's decent. So Stroll's sort of slightly gone under the radar a bit, and I think Stroll could be a good fit. And a team like this, this could do really well. It's balanced. But something to bear in mind, and I mentioned this in my last video, the plus 10 from Max Verstappen is like, I think of the expression, all that is gold does not glitter. And what I mean by that is, this plus 10 looks like a big bar of, big shiny bar of gold, but actually it might not be so fantastic as we think it is. I think a good race week, we want to try and target around 200 points for your team each week. I know it's not going to happen realistically because, you can't really account for random DNFs and whatnot. But we want to try and be as consistent as we can. And if you're looking at 200 points as a good sum of points for the race week, then plus 10 out of that 200 is only worth 5%. So I think it's a bit drastic to be warping our teams around Max Verstappen this week, unless brings me nicely on to the next topic, unless we want to mega drive Max Verstappen. Is there an argument for mega driving Max Verstappen? And this is actually, I've kind of jumped the gun a bit because this is one of the questions somewhere in here about, or from Twitter, about do we want to mega drive Max Verstappen? And for me personally, I think the only reason I will bring in Max Verstappen this week is if I want to mega drive Verstappen this week. Otherwise, I'll probably go for a team more like this. If I want to mega drive Verstappen, bear with me a minute, let's bring him in. So Verstappen's in there. The thing is, if I want to mega drive Verstappen, that probably means Red Bull. I think Red Bull are going to do really well, and I probably want Verstappen and Red Bull in there. So I kind of want that build of all in Red Bull. But I also, like I've touched on earlier, I don't really want to go all in Red Bull and walk my team around it. But we could, bear with me 2 seconds. I've got it up here somewhere. So we bring back Norris. 2 seconds. Norris. Leclerc would have to go in this instance. We bring in Magnussen. So, and I know, sacrilege, blasphemy. I've got rid of Leclerc, but this is still potentially a build I'm looking at if I want to mega drive Verstappen, because I can get to this quite easily with a sub to spare. Ferrari, I think it still gives you some coverage for Ferrari this build, if they happen to do well. It keeps Perez because I think his value is going to go back up as long as nothing disastrous happens in Baku. I think his price will go up again. Going forward, and I'm happy to just hold on to him for the foreseeable future. I think he's a great driver, and he's offering great value. I don't see the point just to whatever. I'm not going into that again. So I think this could be a good team. If Norris is very predictable. So from what we've seen going from practice to qualifying and general race pace. So I think if Norris is doing well in the practice sessions, this could be a build that I'm looking at. It does unfortunately also include Magnussen, but like I said, I think the Haas are fine. They're a good enabler. And this would obviously enable me to turbo drive Perez. So it kind of gives me kind of like doubling up on Red Bulls anyway. And it gives me a small bit of Ferrari coverage. But the big question is really, do we actually want to mega drive Verstappen? And for me personally, it all depends on the practice sessions. And if the Red Bulls are much stronger than the Ferraris, if Verstappen in particular is excelling in the practice sessions and kind of on top of Perez, and then yes, I'll be very tempted to put the mega driver on Verstappen and either turbo drive Perez or Leclerc, depending on the team build I end up going for. But it all depends on the practice sessions for me. I'm kind of, the whole season so far, I've kind of been holding out for Austria. We'll be looking ahead to Austria in a few races' time. At the moment, obviously, it's still a little way to go, but both Leclerc and Perez, if they continue to finish in the top 10, for the next 3 races, they will both be on a plus 10 race streak for Austria, which would be, you could then mega drive either Leclerc or Perez. I don't see anything wrong with putting the mega driver on Perez going forward if he continues his current form. So we could be looking at mega driving Perez or Leclerc and turbo driving whichever one we don't Mega Drive, if that makes sense, because they could be on the streak and the sprint race, and we could really be maximising those big old points in Austria in a few races' time. However, the Mercedes are coming back, and by the time we get to Austria, is there any guarantee that the Red Bulls and Ferraris are actually still going to be the best, the best of the grid? Are the Mercedes going to be up there and super competitive in Austria? We don't know for sure. We know more likely that it is going to be Red Bull and Ferrari this coming weekend, and therefore that's quite a big plus for putting the Mega Drive on Verstappen this weekend. I will say one thing, that Verstappen's not actually had the best record in Baku. If you look at his track record in Baku, I think he's had like 3 DNFs in like 5 races or something. So yeah, that slightly concerns me that maybe he's every time he goes through that little castle section, I'll be holding my breath if he's going to like just clip the wall and break his wing and all the cards come tumbling down. House of Cards collapses, but yeah, but that, it's the same for any race. I do think, in terms of looking ahead to Austria, as in terms of the Mega Drive, I do think Austria in general, I might be completely wrong with this, but in my mind's eye, I think Austria is kind of a safer bet. I think it's a safer track. They're not so, like with Baku, the walls are kind of close in certain areas, and we don't know what's going to happen with the tyre degradation. I think Austria is a lot more predictable and potentially safer, and who knows, but yeah. And enough, because I think I've whittled on, and I could talk about different builds all night long, basically, but I want to have a look at the Twitter questions. I feel like I'm already kind of answering the Twitter questions anyway. So as you know by now, if you've seen any of my other videos, I tweet out like whenever, a few days ahead of a Grand Prix, and I'm going to try and answer these questions. So I've already kind of touched on, I've just been talking about it for the last couple of minutes as to whether we want to max or not to max, as F1 Fantasy Hub has worded it. And like I say, I think if Red Bull are looking extremely strong and I want to put the Mega Driver on Verstappen, then yes, I want to put Max on my team. If I don't think that he's worth Mega Driving, then I probably won't break my team, and I'll probably end up going for the balanced approach, which I've already gone over, but I'm just going to bring it back quickly. So Verstappen leaves, we bring back all the Ferraris. I mean, you could even end up with a team like that if you really wanted. If Norris is doing well, then we could look at, like I say, someone like Stroll. Look at a team like this, or if you want to bring in the Carlos Sainz back, a team like that. I quite like the look of that team, to be honest. And Stroll could be anyone from himself, Albon, Magnussen, whoever you want to pick. So I'm kind of leaning more towards this kind of safe kind of approach. But if I wouldn't fault anyone for going for Verstappen for sure. Anyway, so that kind of answers that question. Sorry if I've not answered it to the full capacity as what you might have expected. But anyway, we'll move on to this question, which I haven't liked it. I'm sorry. I'm very sorry. I liked it now. For this question kind of confused me when I looked at it earlier before coming on to record this, because it kind of indicates that you think the person that's written this in, I don't want to butcher your name, so I'm not going to say it, Jacques. I think it's kind of interesting that you think the Ferraris have reduced their speed deficit in the straights. Even if they have reduced their speed deficit in the straights, there's still a deficit, regardless of whether it's been reduced or not. And I still think that my instinct is telling me that Red Bulls are still going to be stronger going into this race. So I think if you're worried about splitting evenly between Red Bull and Ferrari, like I've just said, I think that's quite a good approach. Because we're not sure, it's not obvious who's going to be better, and it could be down to the setup. And Baku's kind of risky, kind of track with lots of drama that potentially unfolding. It's probably going to be a boring race now, I've said that, but I think the balanced approach for me is just kind of my general approach for fantasy and on the whole. Try not to hit those spikes too much and just kind of keep that team nice and steady throughout the season. But that's just me. Feel free to go against the grain. Do you think some tracks are made for drivers like Baku is for Vettel? Yeah, because obviously, like I say, Vettel's had. Like I said, I've forgotten what I said now. No, I keep saying like I say. He's had like five top fives or something. I can't remember exactly. So he's had a couple of podiums, obviously at the podium last year. I do think Vettel is definitely well suited to this track, and he must be coming there with a lot of confidence that Aston Martin's looking stronger. We look at his actual stats. Obviously, it's not exciting. Where is he here? Vettel, 8 points per race. It's really not looking good. But I do think Aston Martins are on the upward trajectory. I think... Can't really argue that he's probably a better driver than Stroll. He's world champion. Stroll is Stroll, and I'm nothing against Stroll. I think he's fine, but Vettel is, I think he could be a good pick. He could be a good pick if you want to go for that differential. I'm not sure how highly owned he is. Let's have a quick look. Vettel only 9% owned. So yeah, if Vettel does do well, then for sure I think he could be a good pick. So if you want to take a little bit of a punt, then go for Vettel. Another question here: which constructor scores more points this weekend, Ferrari or Red Bull? Again, this is why I should probably do the Twitter question straight away, and it just does the video for me. To be honest, I've already touched on this. I think it's very, very balanced between Ferrari and Red Bull, but I think I'd lean towards Red Bull being the answer to that. So, short answer to that question is Red Bull. This is an interesting question. Give me a more specific dilemma of Bottas and Ocon, or Ocon / anyone under 12.5, like Vettel, for example, against Norris and Schumacher. Interesting you've gone for Schumacher in this question as opposed to Magnussen, unless you've already got Magnussen in your team and you want to go like all in on Verstappen build. But yeah, so for me, Bottas and Ocon seem great because, again, if we throw it back to the spreadsheet, look at the bottom half here. Ocon and Bottas are producing the best value out of everyone down there. So yeah, for sure, Bottas and Ocon, if you can squeeze them into a certain team structure which still enables you to get those bulk of points from Ferrari and Red Bull, because let's bear in mind, let's have a look here. Look how top heavy it is for the constructors here, and all the drivers at the top here. All the points are at the top here, and we want to try and just sort of pinch a few points from anyone underneath. So you don't want to break your team too much to squeeze in the likes of Bottas and Ocon. But if you're looking for that nice, balanced, sort of all-round approach, then I think Bottas and Ocon / Vettel, whoever, could even go for Alonso if he's doing well. I think it is a great shout, and as opposed to Norris, who I think is also going to do well in Baku this season, this weekend, whatever you want to say. I think Norris will be fine, but I'm not sure about Schumacher personally. Not sure about Haas. I've touched on them earlier. So out of this, straight up without looking at any practice sessions, I would say Bottas plus Ocon to answer that. This I'm pretty sure is supposed to say Mega Driver on Verstappen and when to use it. Already touched it. I think Mega Driver, touched on it. Mega Driver if Red Bull looks supreme going in through the practice sessions. For me personally, I'm still leaning more slightly towards waiting for Austria because I think we can potentially really maximise with that sprint race and potential streaks for the likes of Leclerc and Perez. But I wouldn't fault anyone for going for Mega Driver and Verstappen. If you want to go for it, if they look good in practice, go for it. I wish you luck, but I'm not decided on it myself yet. And again, this is the same sort of question: when to use the turbo boost or Mega Driver. I'm not going to answer this question because I've already answered it like 5 times just in the last 5 minutes. So if you haven't done so already, when to wildcard? Honestly, for me, it looks like absolutely any week you want to, because all the people are out there botting and hacking to their heart's content. The prices are changing; they're going up, they're going down. Who the hell knows? To be honest, I feel like I can't really give you proper advice on when to wildcard. Pretty much any week. Maybe in when there's a 2-week gap, maybe not next week when Canada and there's only a chance for like 1 week's worth of price changes. So maybe wait until after Canada, when again we'll probably see crazy price changes because whatever's happening for whatever reason. But there's also the risk that maybe play on the people behind the game will actually get on top of things and stop these botters and hackers or whatever's going on. So I find that very unlikely. But so if you haven't already used your wild card, probably the best time I would say is wait for after Canada, when that's pretty much it. So yeah, like I said, that kind of sums up the video. Lots of different ways we can go this week. We can go all in on Red Bull Verstappen. I haven't really touched on the fact that you could also go all in Ferrari. Ferrari looks really strong in practice, and by all means go in on Ferrari. And having Ferrari as your constructor would probably enable you to bring Max Verstappen into your team. So it's all comes down to your approach. Do you want to spike the points? Do you want to go for the steady, balanced approach, which is what I've got on screen at the moment? Do you want to use the Mega Driver? What happens in practice sessions? There's so many variables, and good luck on Friday evening or Saturday morning anyway. Because like I say, I'm not going to be there to hold your hand. So yeah, let me know what you think. Because I'll be back next week. I feel like this is probably the worst video I've ever done. I feel like I've talked random nonsense for the last 20 minutes or however long this video has been. I apologise if it's been a bit of a rubbish video, but it's been a long week and it's only Wednesday. So anyway, yeah, thanks very much for watching. Like I say, I'll be back for Canada build up next week and hopefully a bit more. Hopefully it'll be a good race in Baku, and I hope you all enjoy it, and I hope your teams do well as always. And thank you and good night.